Hello, everyone. I'm Rena Brio. I'm the Assistant Director of Community Development. Want to thank folks for joining us for a scoping meeting, an EIR scoping meeting for the Tasman East Specific Plan Amendment, where we are preparing an environmental impact report, actually a supplemental, or I should say a subsequent EIR. And we're going to talk a little bit about that process. And so if individuals can bear with me, we're going to have a presentation here, and I just want to introduce Fiona Fung and Will Burns. They're with a environmental consulting firm, David J. Powers, and they are going to be preparing the environmental report that we are going to be talking about today. So they are going to lead portions of this presentation and also help with Q&A. So let me just share my screen so we can go over the overall. Let's see. Hope you guys can see. Okay. There we go. On one second. Trying to see if I can actually. Uh-oh. Can you guys see my screen with the PowerPoint?
Yeah, it just came up.
Okay, great. I froze for a second. So if something happens, just because we're out in the remote world, you know, with Zoom, I will, you know, please just log back on and I'll do the same and we'll keep this meeting moving, assuming if we have hit any unanticipated technology issues. So for today's agenda, we're going to talk about the existing project. So there is an existing specific plan out in Tasman East. Want to go over that with folks. Where is the implementation of that specific plan to date? Give a description on the amendment that is being discussed now, that the environmental documents being prepared for. We're going to have Fiona talk about the scoping meeting purpose, the EIR process and timeline, and then we're going to formally receive public comments and talk about next steps. So just to orientate folks, I think everyone who's on this call is aware, but Tasman East is a 45-acre site. It is light industrial in nature. In 2018, in November of 2018, the City Council adopted a specific plan to allow for the construction of 4,500 residential units, as well as supporting retail. The industrial activities in Tasman East can continue. So there isn't a requirement for those activities to stop or to change or to redevelop. They can continue. This is really a plan for future redevelopment of any parcels. So the 4,500 units have been moving forward rather quickly. A lot of that has to do with the market cycle and when the plan got approved, and also the general need for housing in the Bay Area. So, you know, almost all of those 4,500 units have either been entitled or have an application on file to go through the entitlement process. So in recognizing that, of the 45 acres, the 4,500 units have pretty much reached capacity, yet there is still a fair amount of land left in Tasman East. If individuals wanted to redevelop, there wouldn't be any more capacity in the specific plan. So really recognizing that, that's where we've gone for the amendment. But just to tell you, and we'll orient you on the current specific plan. So there are these green circles here indicate dedicated parkland, and then you will see a network of paseos, and those are really intended to allow for the movement of individuals, bicycles, This street here, Calle del Sol, you enter Tasman East, it's envisioned to be really where a lot of the retail is going to be. There is a extension that will not be open to vehicles. It's actually for pedestrians and cyclists only, but there will be retail fronting this paseo with overflow seating. So this is really, this area here on Calle del Sol is sort of a lot of the placemaking that's happening in addition to the dedicated parkland. So the city should move forward. Okay, so as I had mentioned, so almost all of the 4,500 units are in the form of entitled units already, or projects that are under the entitlement process, and really recognizing there's still space, land available, right? There's need in our area for more housing, an opportunity to create more capacity in this specific plan. So, you know, some of the things that have come up is if we're going to add more units, and this is, we've had some study sessions with our city council on this. You know, if we're going to add more units, there's also an interest to add more amenities to the area, more parkland, for instance, or private open space. In particular, parkland was something that was talked about, so that we're not just adding more people, but that there's more amenities to support the additional people that could be living here. So the project description of the specific plan amendment includes adding up to 1,500 residential units. So as I mentioned, there are 4,500 that are currently in the plan. That would be bringing it up to 6,000 in the plan area, adding an additional 20,000 square feet of retail, 20,000 square feet of co-working space, 10,000 square feet of daycare, recognizing both co-working and daycare are very complementary uses for more residential development. And then the densities in Tasman East have a range between 60 to 350 DU to the acre. We have been seeing proposals come in at over 100 DU to the acre. So, you know, certainly on the higher density range, not quite as high as 350, but definitely not on the lower end of 60 DU to the acre. And building heights are proposed to be consistent with the current plan, which would be up to 220 feet. So with that, I am going to transition this over to Fiona to talk about the environmental impact review process.
Thank you, Rena. So my name is Fiona Fung, and I am a project manager at David J. Powers and Associates. As Rena mentioned earlier, our firm is assisting the city of Santa Clara with the preparation of the subsequent environmental impact report, or SEIR for short, for the Tasman East Specific Plan Amendment Project. Before I discuss the environmental impact report process, I wanted to go over the purpose of CEQA and the environmental impact report, or EIR for short. So the purpose of CEQA is to disclose environmental impacts, identify and prevent environmental damage, disclose decision-making, enhance public participation, and foster intergovernmental coordination. The purpose of an EIR is to inform the public and decision makers about potential environmental impacts of a project and provide problem-solving tools such as mitigation measures and alternatives to avoid impacts. So a brief overview of the EIR process. Once the lead agency determines that an EIR is required, a notice of preparation, or NOP for short, is prepared and circulated to the public for 30 days. For this project, the NOP starts circulation on July 7th and will end at 5 p.m. on August 8th. So please be sure to submit written comments by August 8th. All comments received will be considered in the SEIR, and after the NOP circulation period, the SEIR is prepared, which will identify the significant environmental effects anticipated to result from build-out of the project. Okay, next slide. So the SEIR is intended to be a program-level document that will analyze the broad environmental effects of the project. No specific development projects are being considered. Rather, the analysis will focus on the reasonably foreseeable direct and indirect physical and environmental effects that could result from modification of the previously adopted Tasman East specific plan. The SEIR will include an analysis of 20 resource areas, which are shown on the slide, and upon completion of the analysis, the SEIR will circulate for 45 calendar days. Next slide. So there are several opportunities for public input. The first is by submitting written comments by 5 p.m. on August 8th. The second is by speaking or submitting comments during today's scoping meeting. The third is providing comments during the 45-day SEIR public circulation period. And the fourth is during the Planning Commission and City Council hearings. Next slide. So written and verbal comments received will be included in the SEIR. Comments pertaining specifically to the scope of the environmental review will be addressed within the text of the draft SEIR. Once the SEIR is complete, the city will circulate the SEIR for 45 calendar days, and the city will respond to any comments received during the circulation period in the final EIR, which will be made available to the public for 10 days prior to the first public hearing. And verbal comments will also be taken at both Planning Commission and City Council hearings. Next slide. There are several ways you can provide a scoping comment. The first, you can do so verbally during today's scoping meeting, or you can provide written comments by mail to John Davidson at the address listed above, or by email at jdavidson@santaclaraca.gov. Next slide. So here's a brief overview of the proposed schedule. Right now, we are at the first step of the EIR process, which is the NOP circulation and EIR scoping meeting. As mentioned in my previous slides, the NOP comment period ends on August 8th. The SEIR will be done and anticipated to be circulated by winter of 2023, and the final EIR and hearings are anticipated to occur in spring of 2023. And now I will turn it back to Rena.
Great, thank you, Fiona. So, you know, I know we went over a lot of content for folks, and this is an opportunity to really ask questions, people in the public, folks, or provide comments, right, on the NOP so that those can be taken into account while the subsequent EIR is being developed. I'm going to stop sharing my screen because it is a little distracting for me to see what's going on in the Zoom world, but we can pull that back up. So just want to ask folks in our audience, we have just a handful of folks, but really want to answer any questions that people may have about, you know, the current specific plan, or more precisely, you know, what we're taking on right now, which is the NOP, that will help us analyze the 1,500 units. Are there things we should be taking into account or areas that you'd like to provide feedback on? And if you have a question, just feel free to raise your hand in Zoom. Okay. So I see, Ron Patrick, you've got your hand up. I am going to, you should be unmuted, so you should be able to talk.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Rena. You've had these environmental impact reports before for the area, except for saying that more people is going to be more traffic and, you know, more people issues. Is it possible to think like bigger? Like the dream I have is to integrate Tasman East with related Santa Clara, and so that there doesn't have to be duplication of services, like on one side of the railroad line and the other. And although I don't want to pay for it, I'll kick in a couple bucks. But I was thinking of like a monorail that would sort of loop through East Tasman and then go over to related Santa Clara. I know the University of San Jose is putting together proposals of renewable solar-powered monorail connecting the, you know, tying together the university. But wouldn't it be cool to sort of don't have redundancy of services, just on either side of the road. And crossing this road, okay, we got a railroad, we have a very busy road, which are getting busier. But has anyone thought of connecting these together with things other than walkways? Because my mother doesn't like walkways. Something like a monorail, like at Disneyland.
Yeah, Ron, so that's an interesting question and comment. What I can say is that actually with the Patrick Henry Drive specific plan, which the city council adopted, I think the date is March 22nd of this year, there was the creation of a, we call them, the acronym is a TMA, but I don't know if it's a Transportation Management Association. And Tasman East is actually, when that TMA, that Patrick Henry Drive, is responsible for kicking off, the Tasman East property owners also will be on the hook to participate in that. And that isn't as something as maybe, it is yet to be determined the actual method of kind of recognizing that this area is, you know, broader than itself. It's like Patrick Henry Drive isn't on its own. It's in the context of Northern Santa Clara. The topic wasn't about a monorail, but of a shuttle that would take people around to different destinations. And so that's actually in the works with Patrick Henry Drive and in the works with Tasman East. It's just that Patrick Henry Drive is on the hook, if you will, from a specific plan requirement standpoint to initiate that. And then Tasman East would actually be participating for, you know, these are the properties that redevelop, of course, in actually contributing financially, as well as bringing their residents to actually participate in the proposal on the table was a shuttle, but I don't think that it has to be a shuttle. It can be determined at a later date. I think a monorail wasn't something anyone talked about or discussed, but I just wanted to share that this concept of and then Related Santa Clara has indicated that they would potentially be interested. They were entitled quite a while ago in terms of like not in the last few years. So it's for them really a voluntary participation, but they have been interested in wanting to participate in something like this North Santa Clara TMA. I don't know if Ron, that kind of answers your question. I think your comment, like something like that, you know, we will take it and then we can incorporate it. Not necessarily that that idea would come to fruition, but at least there would be some public light on the idea, and then people can also consider it when the TMA is formed. And Ron, I see your hand up again, so feel free.
I'm saying thank you. And I'm not the only person. The mayor has mentioned this, and council member Jane has mentioned this thing. But that's cool that you guys have this in mind. I'm not the first person to think of this integration issue. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I see some more folks who are in our audience. If you have questions here to answer whatever you have questions on, or to take comments. And to do that, you just got to raise your hand in Zoom, which I think most people know now how to do. Joel, I am going to allow you to speak. I think you just have to unmute yourself.
There you go. Sorry about that. Well, good afternoon. My name is Joel Toscano, and I'm a union representative at Local 405 here in Santa Clara County. And today I would like to advocate on behalf of all the construction workers in the area. Construction workers that are unable to succeed and thrive in the city like ours due to labor standards and are held up by some contractors. This is why I strongly suggest implementation of labor practices such as healthcare, apprenticeship, and local hire to the Tasman East plan. Policies like this would only elevate the quality of life for the working class in Santa Clara County. I would like you very much if we can have a sit down, maybe discuss more of these policies with you. And that's all. Thank you.
And could you mention again who you were with? I think you mentioned. at the
I'm with the Carpenters Union
beginning. Okay.
here at Local 405 in San Jose.
And a couple things. One, you could shoot John Davidson an email with your contact information if you don't feel comfortable just
Okay.
sharing it right now, or you can share it with me right now. But either way, it's up to you. But just so that that we could follow up with you
Okay.
as you've requested.
What was his name again?
It'll show up on the slide. I'll bring it back
Okay.
up. His name's John Davidson. He's actually responsible for being the project manager. He just couldn't be here today. So,
Okay.
but I will put it back on the screen so you can see his name. That way we can follow up with you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Just gonna share that for just a second, Joel. I'm gonna
Okay.
share it with you. So if you don't mind writing it down, because it's
Yeah.
hard for me. It's hard for me to see the Zoom world when I've got this screen up.
Okay.
Can you see that?
Yes, I do.
So yeah, email is probably the fastest way to get it.
Mhm. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay. Anyone else in the audience who'd like to ask questions or to comment? Hi, Ron.
I didn't know if you'd give me another chance, but I read
Yeah.
over the, at the end, I read over the letters from outside people commenting on this expansion. And the Santa Clara School District individuals said, if they don't get a school here, they won't support this project. I understand that this individual's thinking about the school and the students, but what happens if he doesn't get a school? What is he gonna do? Kill everything? Like, what happens because of support?
Yeah, so the city generally, we try to encourage, helping the school district find land. And we keep them apprised of these processes. Whenever we know that someone's selling anything, we sort of advise the school district. The school district does have to go through that process themselves of purchasing the land, as well as, I should say the city hasn't historically designated sites for a school, for instance. So that's just historically, and I feel like most communities operate this way. So where the city comes from is trying to encourage the school district to find the right land and to help them, make that happen. But that is something that they have to work on with a private entity. And the school is its own, agency, right? They will comment if this is an issue for them. And the city, addresses the comments, and we try to strike a balance where, from an environmental standpoint, that's what we are held to from a CEQA standpoint. So, if there's a CEQA angle that they're presenting, then we would obviously have to look at it from that standpoint. I don't know if Will or Fiona, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would just add that the current specific plan does allow for a 600 student school. So that isn't necessarily a public school, but it was considered that there might be students within the plan area and that would be an acceptable use if there were either the school district or another a entity that wanted to open a school in the area. That's allowed. So there is some provision for that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's an important point, Will. So programmatically, the environmental clearance is there if the school wanted to buy for up to 600 students, right?
Right.
They could move forward with a plan they actually, I think, have to go through the state architect, but
Correct.
they would have their own, they would have CEQA coverage for this, environmental clearance for up to 600 units at a programmatic level. So I think that the city has approached this with various plans where we've put the capacity there, and it really is about the school district securing the site through purchasing a site to be able to build it to meet their needs.
And
So
the same thing with the grocery store?
grocery store, yes and no. The city cannot force a use to happen. We can only allow for a use. So for instance, our plan would allow for that amount of retail. And so there is capacity for a grocery store. If we had a private developer come forward, the city has on occasion, really rarely, and it is difficult because there are a lot of challenges with where grocery stores want to locate and stuff. But the city has, I've seen, the council take action on a specific project that maybe had good frontage and visibility, but not, we wouldn't be able to force a grocery store to locate somewhere. It was more if a development was proposed specifically, the city could, if it had a discretionary opportunity, be able to do something like that. Does that answer your question, Ron?
Yes, and on the other end of environmental impact, say that something is proposed will have a minimal environmental impact, actually go in the other direction. Does that have to go through a similar process as this?
So what we're doing is we're looking at all of this on I'm using this word carefully, cumulative manner, right? We know that we're not looking at this as one site developing, but rather this entire specific plan and what the entire amount of development is. And I think that's the best way to do this. And, there's also a lot of legal precedent around that. Like if you're trying to build out an area, you want to look at the area holistically. An individual project in and of itself may not have as much impact, but then when you look at the collective, right, that's why they want us to kind of take a bigger picture look at how everything's coming together. So I don't know if that answers your question, or if you were saying something like,
say that somebody wanted to live here in one of his industrial buildings to get an occupancy permit.
Yeah, that would be actually a building permit discussion, because the building would have to actually be capable, be rated, be improved in such a manner for a residential occupancy.
But that would be an EIR issue.
No, it wouldn't be an EIR.
Last question, unless you say something interesting. How come the data farm, which is probably the biggest user of electricity in East Tasman, how come they got to cut out of the East Tasman project? How did they get excluded? Like what box did they check over? The one Tasman and Lafayette.
Yeah, right there on the corner.
Yeah,
and they're actually, let me make sure I'm speaking from, we don't think about them a lot. You're right, we don't. They are still in the plan. They are in, when you look at the boundaries of the plan, the data center that's on the corner of Tasman and Lafayette is in the plan area. We do know that they have no interest in near-term redevelopment. Should they want to redevelop, they could work off, they can't now because we have no capacity left in the specific plan. But with this amendment, and they've not indicated to us that they have any interest in doing this, but should they change their mind, they could potentially try to pull from the 1,500 units that is in the process of being created should that amendment get approved.
It's just the map that was associated with the documents for today's meeting had them excluded.
Oh, that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
We'll take a look at that, because
not saying get rid
boundary.
of them, you know?
Yeah, no, they are in the plan area, and I'll just show you real quickly.
Yeah, my map here.
Yeah, so when you look at the specific plan, like this is a very, this general land use
Yes,
plan,
listed.
you see it over, that is not the data center. The data center is actually in here.
Okay.
That is actually a piece of right of way.
Oh, that's the
yeah.
the homeless center now, if you really want to know.
Yeah, I know it's got an unusual sort of happenstance, right? But that's not the data center.
Okay, thank you for the
Yeah.
correction. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Will or Fiona, is there anything that you folks feel like we should add on that we didn't cover?
I think just reiterating that people, if they're want to submit comments, have an opportunity to do so through August 8th as part of the scoping for this EIR.
Great.
And that information, who to contact John Davidson, was presented earlier and is also available in the notice they received.
Yes, and you said August 8th?
Yes, that's the close of the
Yes.
Scoping period.
Great, thank you, Will. Ron, is
Sorry,
there?
So few times that I can click on a screen and empower myself, but how did this come into being? Like, if who triggered this expansion? I'm all for it. I've already said, like, back this place up. I want to see 40 story tower. I know you got the airport, but what triggered this? And I hope more are going to be triggered after this. But how does the process start to enhance what's here?
Right, so the interest in the amendment, I think, is that what your question is about the 1,500 units? Yeah, so that actually is a couple things. One, the city sees it, just big picture. The state is requiring all jurisdictions to build more housing. And the cities have to put together plans for how we're going to achieve the housing that the state has kind of allocated. And so, the city, upon careful review of just opportunities, saw Tasman East as a place where we are doing a lot of work. There's a lot of redevelopment, but recognizing there's still a lot of land left, recognize that there is this capacity issue. It's an entitlement permitting issue that if we could reduce barriers, then individuals could further develop in the specific plan.
So it's coming through the city then?
It's coming through the city. It's not coming from any private development interest.
That's okay.
We are utilizing some grant funding to move the specific plan forward. So that's really where it's coming from, is the city itself recognizing that this is a good location to, and that there are properties that could take advantage of more redevelopment opportunities if this amendment got approved.
Now, across the street at Santa Clara, we go with a drone here, see what's going on. And in Tasman East, there's been some like super building going on. How come nothing's going on across the street? It's dead.
Are you talking about the related project?
Yeah.
Oh, there's actually a lot happening. They are moving their plans forward. I know, because we're meeting about this stuff, and they're moving on their building permits and all of that. So they, I think a lot of people kind of slowed down with the pandemic for various, every organization or company had different reasons. But I do know that as far as I'm aware, that is moving right along. And that there's been maybe some delay because of the pandemic for sure, but I don't think that, there's any staleness there. I think they're actively pursuing, they've gotten their planning entitlement work done. Now they're on to building permit review with the city. And, it is, as I know, Ron, it's, a really complicated project because of, what the former uses on the site and such.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Or Ron, you can still ask more questions.
Okay,
I
okay.
mean,
Thanks, Skip. I have your email.
Yeah. Okay, well, with that, to close, August 8th, important day so that you can provide comments to help us appropriately scope this subsequent EIR. And the email was to John Davidson. Like it's in the notices, you can also find his email on the website. And yeah, that would allow us to move forward with this process. Ron, I know you've got your hand up.
No, I don't. No, I don't.
Oh,
Now.
maybe it didn't move down and I saw it again. Sorry about that. Okay, so with that, just want to thank everyone for coming tonight and look forward to seeing any more comments come our way. Thank you, everyone.